Coming up on the final Cannabis Coast to Coast news with Alaina Pinto for 2024.
Now that we have a Republican majority, it's really important that Democrats get on board with the idea that we can't let the perfect be the enemy of the good.
NCIA Executive Director Aaron Smith talks with PCMTV Founder Jimmy Young about the challenges ahead for lobbyists with a new administration while dealing with the end of a lame duck Congress, while GOP leaders continue to block any attempt from Democrats to finally get the Safer Banking Act back on the agenda. And a report on the strength of the cannabis industry shows slow growth year over year with more market compression, falling prices, and the unknown political future. And Texas Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick proposes a ban on all THC products in his state, threatening a vibrant hemp industry in the Lone Star State. And more violence targeting cannabis dispensaries in Oregon continues, where dozens of crimes are being committed and now workers are being targeted. And in this season of giving, President Joe Biden pardons and commutes the sentences of close to 1,500 federal nonviolent convictions, freeing prisoners from jail and home confinement in one of the largest single days of federal forgiveness for past cannabis crimes. All that and more on this year's final Cannabis Coast to Coast news with Alaina Pinto. Next!
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Cannabis Coast to Coast News, a PCMTV production of weekly news from the cannabis industry from Oregon to Massachusetts. I'm Alaina Pinto. Friendly reminder that you can follow, like, and share this weekly newscast by downloading our PCMTV app, available in the App Store or Google Play. We will continue to post the QR code in this show so you can scan and go. First up this week, it may be the final days of his administration, but President Joe Biden is starting to pardon and commute the sentences of close to 1,500 people who have served years in jail and in home confinement from non-violent cannabis crimes. The Last Prisoner Project alone worked on 4 such cases. So no matter how many presents you might receive during this holiday season, the gift of freedom is tough to wrap in a box, but it's the best gift these many people will receive. They include 69-year-old Danny Harmon, 67-year-old Rory Meeks, 59-year-old Flavio Temez, and 38-year-old Thomas Henderson. Now, all have served a minimum of 10 years in prison for nonviolent cannabis crimes and had been on home confinement after exemplary behavior and rehabilitation while in prison. The White House released this statement this week. The president's categorical approach to clemency has also inspired leaders across the country to take similar action. Over 10 states and localities, including Maryland and Massachusetts, have issued categorical clemency for marijuana convictions, impacting hundreds of thousands of people and allowing individuals to move past their convictions and move on with their daily lives. While that's certainly good news for these federal offenders, there are still thousands of nonviolent cannabis offenders behind bars. The Last Prisoner Project and a handful of other nonprofit groups continue to pursue to right the wrongs for possession and other nonviolent cannabis convictions. In the meantime, in Congress, it's doubtful that safe banking reform will have ever a chance to be discussed during this lame duck Congress. And now the industry eyes and hopes for reform lie with the controlling Republican Party in all branches of the government. Moving federal reform up the priority list for this incoming new administration is a daunting task, a challenge many lobbyists are looking forward to, and that includes the NCIA. Their executive director, Aaron Smith, talked about that and the strategies to continue to fight for the end of cannabis prohibition in this exclusive interview with PCMTV founder Jimmy Young.
All right, welcome back to Cannabis Coast to Coast News. This is a special one-on-one with the Executive Director of the NCIA, the National Cannabis Industry Association's Aaron Smith, and I, of course, am PCMTV founder Jimmy Young. Aaron, thank you so much for joining us on this last newscast of 2024. I know, it's sad, right? But we have a year and new hope, don't we, Aaron?
Yeah, it's great to be here with you as always. I can't believe it's the end of the year. And we've got a lot to look forward to in 2025, I think, if we play our cards right.
Well, you're the card player. I'm just the observer, and I appreciate all the card playing that you do in the lobbies of our Congress. But the first question I got to ask you is about the DEA hearing that happened on December 2nd. Um, as you explained to me, the NCIA was represented by your attorneys, but you weren't allowed in the room, but you were able to watch it and observe what was going on. Can you give me a little debrief on what happened during that time?
Yeah, I mean that was a kind of a preliminary, pretty procedural hearing. There wasn't a lot of substance to it, but what the judge did do was kind of lay out what the plan was going to be for the coming now almost 3 months. It's going to be of witness testimony and went through scheduling and those sorts of logistics. So shortly after that hearing, the administrative law judge set dates starting in January 21st, so the day after the inauguration, through March 6th, and it's about 3 hearings a week over that span of time. And they will be listening to each day as a different organization's witness, and NCIA's is on January 29th.
Great. Well, we wish you good luck with that one. Quick question. Where do you think the DEA places more value? Is it on the public comments and that was made during that public comment period, or is it in these controlled testimonies?
I mean, I think it's in these the testimony is probably going to be the most important part, but it's all important. It's the public comment. We saw an overwhelming support for cannabis, not just rescheduling but descheduling. That wasn't surprising. This is going to be testimony from not the public but from various public health experts on both sides of the issue here, and I think it's really going to seal the deal. It's important to know that this will be the third time. Well, if the administrative law judge does suggest that cannabis needs to be moved to Schedule 3, this will be the third such time that's happened in our nation's history. But will be the only time that the DEA was the proponent of that change. In the past, that you had organizations like NORML, Americans for Safe Access, petitioning for rescheduling, and in those cases, the ALJ actually agreed and said, this is, look at the evidence, years ago even, it was pretty clear that cannabis needed to be moved out of Schedule 1.
Hey, lastly, as you look back on the year, this is what we do in December, is we look back at the year. Is there one story in particular, if you had to pick one story that was the biggest in the industry this year? It was kind of an odd year. What would it be?
Well, geez, I mean, I think that it would be one thing was that really struck me as a milestone is we had both presidential candidates supporting cannabis policy reform for the first time. And it wasn't just a couple cycles ago, neither candidate would touch the issue, and then here we are where we had the Republican and the Democrat supporting rescheduling, and then supporting, in their own way, supporting reform beyond rescheduling. And in Trump's case, he supported the Florida initiative, which got a good number of votes considering the institutional opposition to it. Yep. Unfortunately, didn't reach that 660. But also having Kamala Harris on the other side supporting reform. So that, to me, that was a big moment in our history to see that, and I don't think we'll ever go forward without that. That's going to be the norm now. So that means that because we're not going backwards, so that means to me that this is just a matter of time. Then for me personally, it was great to see. I've sat in the room with Kamala Harris when she was the district attorney of San Francisco, and she was skeptical of medical cannabis, many years ago, right? So to see that evolution has been, was great. So we'll get there.
Great. Hey, that's a great way to end it. Hey, Aaron Smith, happy holidays to you, your organization, your family. Thank you so much for joining us on a somewhat regular basis this year. I look forward to 2025, and hopefully a year from now, we'll be celebrating. Fair enough?
Yes.
All right.
Likewise, Jimmy.
You bet. Let's go back to Alaina Pinto now.
The entirety of that interview with Aaron Smith will be available on our website at procannabismedia.com. and the PCMTV app, of course. We will release it on our full network on Thursday of this week. So let's now begin our roundup of state reports. We start with Oregon, where Marianne Cursetjee tells us about more violence and robberies of dispensaries in that state over the past few weeks.
I'm Marianne from Alibi with the Oregon Cannabis Report for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. Oregon's next legislative session hasn't even started, and yet we already have a proposal to increase cannabis taxes. Any increase in tax will be another knife in the heart of an already struggling industry. Oversaturation, yes, a continued theme, and past due payments continue to plague the industry. This week, another dispensary was robbed. An employee at Truly Pure was violently attacked and suffered injuries, while the 4 robbers stole merchandise and product. This is reportedly only one in a dozen such robberies in the last few weeks. And on a happy note, the cannabis industry in Oregon will come together on January 17 to celebrate the new year. The Blaze Ball will be a celebration of the heights we can reach together. That's the Oregon Cannabis Report. I'm Marianne with Alibi for Cannabis Coast to Coast News.
In Texas, the current state government continues to target the hemp and cannabis industries in that state. This week, their Lieutenant Governor, Dan Patrick, proposed a ban on all THC products. Back in 2019, Texas passed a law legalizing the sale and distribution of hemp products containing less than 0.3% of THC in dry weight. The idea was to help the Texas agriculture market by creating another cash crop for farmers. That, of course, has led to the growth of $1 billion industry for hemp products in that state. And now the government wants to rewrite that law prohibiting any amount of THC in hemp. No such issues, though, in Arizona, a state that is wrapping up another successful season of sales. Here's Karen Black with a look back at 2024.
I'm Karen Black from Greenfinger Consulting with the Arizona Cannabis Report for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. Arizona's cannabis market is on a wild ride. We hit the $1 billion mark for the year in October, with adult use sales rebounding to $75.3 million after the number crunchers of the Department of Revenue revised September's numbers upward. They also gave a new total of $92.5 million for March 2024, making that month the new high for adult use sales. However, total 2024 cannabis sales are projected to come in below last year's $1.4 billion. More bad news? Medical sales dipped to a near record low of just under $17 million. Tax collections are at $222.1 million through October, not too shabby, but lower than 2022 and 2023. LeafLink announced its 2024 awards, and several Arizona products made the national list of best-selling products. The world's THC factory nabbed the top spot for concentrates, while Timeless Vapes came in second for cartridges. Vape Bros came in third for edibles, and Stizzy Arizona came in third for pre-rolls. Back here in the Grand Canyon state, Stizzy, Timeless Vapes, and Verano were named the top-selling brands, while Breeze Canna, Presidential Moon Rocks, and Sonoran Roots are the fastest growing. Check out LeafLink's website for a full list of winners. More brand news? Black Buddha cannabis products are now available in Arizona, and Groon teamed up with Curaleaf to offer prickly pear-flavored gummies here in Arizona. Timeless sponsored a Grass Lake golf tournament in Tempe last week and launched its collection of cannabis-themed golf merchandise just in time for Christmas. That's all for the Arizona Report. I'm Karen Black from Greenfinger Consulting reporting for Cannabis Coast to Coast News.
Coming up on Monday, December 23rd, we will be hosting a year-end roundup with the Cannabis Coast to Coast News team and some special guests. Log on to our network of social media platforms from 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern Time. The state of Minnesota is starting to understand all about cannabis standard time. It looks like the beginning of adult use sales in that state will be further delayed as one of the newest states to welcome legalization. Advocates and applicants had hoped that the state was on track for a launch in the first quarter of 2025, but now that has been pushed back for months. Once again, a state trying to do the right thing by giving social equity applicants first crack at licenses has ended up in the courts, causing a delay to the lottery that was scheduled to begin at the beginning of December. The pre-approval process designed to give first crack at licenses to social equity applications has been scrapped, and now they will return to the general licensing process. Well, now let's check in with California and Dina Nagib.
I'm Dina Nagib, Principal Consultant at Grass Goddess Consulting, here to give you the California Cannabis Report for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. Over the past couple of weeks, reports have been coming out about a wide-ranging cannabis corruption investigation. Former Baldwin Park City Attorney Robert Tafoya admitted his role in a cannabis bribery scheme and agreed to cooperate in ongoing public corruption investigations. Tafoya alleges that in exchange for money, an unnamed candidate agreed to use their powers as a state elected official to protect Tafoya's job and assist him financially. The alleged racketeering operation began in June 2017 when then Baldwin Park City Council member Ricardo Pacheco began soliciting bribes from marijuana companies for permits to operate in the San Gabriel Valley. There's a lot to this story and more coming out all the time, so stay tuned for more to unravel. In other news, this past Friday, the 13th, the motion was signed to open up consumption and special event licenses in the city of Los Angeles. This move in the second biggest U.S. city is being celebrated, and the industry is excited to fully take advantage when the Olympics come to LA in 2028. After seeing Snoop Dogg as such an important figure at the last Olympics, is anyone surprised? That's it for the California news this week. This is Dina Nagib from Grass Goddess Consulting for Cannabis Coast to Coast News.
That'll do it for the first section or the A block of Cannabis Coast to Coast News. We'll have more state reports coming up after this.
Hi, I'm Christina Brisson with Over the Top Renovations and Cannabis Coast to Coast News, saying happy holidays to you and yours from Franklin Park Conservatory, aglow.
In Loveland, Ohio, Emily and Mark seek to deepen their bond through intimacy. They turn to Yellow Labs Rose Oil Massage Cream with delivery technology, promising enhanced pleasure and connection. The cream ignites increased sensitivity and arousal as they apply it, kindling a shared passion. Excited by its effects, they find joy in shared closeness and moments of unity.
Ready to take your craft to the next level? Imagine faster extractions, purer products, and more profits. Sounds good, right? At Pure 5 Extraction, we've revolutionized cannabis extraction with our game-changing technology. No solvents, no heat, just the cleanest, most natural process on the market. Whether you're a boutique grower or a large-scale operation, Pure 5 has the tools to elevate your business worldwide. Visit pure5extraction.com today. Pure 5 Extraction, because your plants deserve the best.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the last Cannabis Coast to Coast News Report for 2024. I'm Alaina Pinto. A reminder that if you want to see PCMTV's documentation of the fight to end cannabis prohibition, you should download the app at the Google Play or App Store. And that will always be the first place to find the news every Monday morning. But in the meantime, in New York, the Empire State's rollout of licenses continues to plod along. Even though close to 70 adult use licenses were granted, there is still 3,000 applications in the queue, and some of them were filed a year ago. Once again, the state licensing process is just the first of many delays anyone who wants to get into this industry faces. The whole industry has slowed down as the green rush has turned into a green delay. In a report released this past week by ATB Capital Markets, industry revenues grew just 3.2% year over year, and the unknown future of federal reform makes investors uneasy about jumping back onto the cannabis bandwagon. One company that continues to adapt to a changing market is Canopy Growth from Canada, who made a huge acquisition this week when they bought Acreage Holdings. Needless to say, the publicly traded stock is poised to jump, according to our Wall Street guru, Doug Miller, who is high on Wall Street.
I'm Doug Miller from High on Wall Street with this week's Cannabis Stock Report, reporting for Cannabis Coast to Coast. Canopy Growth Corporation confirmed that Canopy USA LLC has completed its acquisition of Acreage. Canopy USA now owns 100% of the issued and outstanding shares of Acreage. Completing the acquisition of Acreage marks the final step in establishing Canopy USA as a unified platform, which we believe offers significant upside as the Canopy USA portfolio of brands can now capitalize on the rapidly expanding U.S. cannabis market, independent of the need for federal legalization, is what CEO David Klein said. So let's see how Canopy Growth looks on the stock charts. It's trading around 311 and it's hitting the bottom, as most of the cannabis stocks are right now. So it should be setting up to bounce off that bottom. So keep your eye on CGC and the other cannabis ones to run soon, because the sector is setting up. So trade smart and lock in those profits. And that's this week's Cannabis Stock Report, reporting for Cannabis Coast to Coast. I'm Doug Miller.
Every year, Health Canada does a thorough survey on cannabis use in their federally legal country. There are some interesting results. The data from this survey was collected over a 3-month period from April to July of this year. The top finding was that smoking flower continues to decline, yet continues to be the favorite means of consumption. 69% fire up, while 57% prefer edibles, followed by vaping. Most respondents reported getting their cannabis from a legal source, but in 2019, that number was 37%, and now it is 72%. There has also been a decline in use of a car under the influence, so that's good, and people are being more cautious in 2018 when it was 27%, and now, though, it's down to 18% of participants admitting to operating under the influence. This is what federal legalization of cannabis looks like in 2024, and perhaps this information should be shared with our elected officials in Washington, D.C. The more evidence, the better in this fight to end cannabis prohibition. Since we are talking about Debi Facey's home country, she left the zip code and the country to check out the United States for the first time, and she went to MJ BizCon in Las Vegas, Nevada. She really was a kid in a candy store collecting bags of swag and samples. Here's her Canadian cannabis report and her spin on the Health Canada survey's results.
This is Debi Facey with the Canadian Coast to Coast Cannabis News Report. So after MJ Biz last week in Las Vegas, I came back to an awesome survey that took place on December 6th, which stated a little bit more of the information that most Canadians should be taking into consideration when it comes to their brands and their stores, but also for just any Canadian that is going to be consuming or thinking of consuming. What we found that the actual age when it came to teenagers had risen. So it's no longer the 18-year-olds, it's now the 20-year-olds, which is great because it means that it's becoming more of that legal age that is being attracted to it. We also found that 80% of Canadians are finding that the cannabis awareness risks are discouraging and that there are more risks involved than there are solutions. We've also found that 70% of Canadians felt that enough trustworthy information about cannabis risk is slightly higher than 2019, which means we still have a lot to go. 70% is not enough. We need 100. And what we also found was that the exposure to secondhand smoke was 57%, and that was mostly vapor, which is kind of funny since a lot of us that do smoke, I should say consume cannabis, wouldn't necessarily think that vapes are actually going to become, and now is, the problem. We should be taking that into consideration, I guess, too. This is Debi Facey with the Canadian Coast to Coast Cannabis News Report. Peace.
Education is going to be the key for getting cannabis acceptance in our society. Right now, the count of legal adult use states is stalled at 24. 39 have now decriminalized it and have some form of medical program in place or information. However, Minnesota can't even get launched. New York struggles with its licensing process. And while Pennsylvania is starting to talk about an adult use law in their legislature, that's all that has happened. It's just talk. Okay. Meanwhile, in Las Vegas, Nevada, cannabis is starting to become a tourist attraction with a few social consumption lounges open, including Days, the one PCMTV founder checked out last week. If you haven't seen that story and you want a tour of Planet 13, you can check out that on our YouTube channel or at the end of this show. Dina Tasaka is very comfortable in Las Vegas, where she lived for quite a few years. Now she reports on the tribal nations in the cannabis business and on the Cannabis Policy Institute at the University of Las Vegas. Here's Tina.
I'm Tina Tasaka with 420 Technologies, and this is the Nevada and Tribal Nations report for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. The Cannabis Policy Institute at UNLV has unveiled 3 groundbreaking reports during its first ever symposium held on December 5th. These reports tackle pressing issues like regulatory reform, market trends, and the booming THC beverage sector, aiming to guide Nevada as a leader in cannabis policy. Highlights include studies or responsible cannabis marketing, Nevada's economic trends, and the complexities of THC beverages. Panel discussions featured national experts diving into topics like cannabis hospitality and policy innovation. This event coincided with MJBizCon, the country's largest cannabis conference, underscoring Las Vegas's pivotal role in this fast-evolving industry. For more, visit the UNLV Cannabis Policy Institute website. Did you get enough of the consumption lounges during MJBizCon? I know I didn't. Well, here's your chance. New Woo Sky High Lounge is having the New Woo's second annual Blazing 20s Great Gatsby New Year's Eve Bash. And the evening highlights include $25 tickets, and that will get you a penny dab and a delightful can of cocktail. DJ OJ Surge will be there spinning all night, and there's fireworks, live entertainment, and a raffle for exciting prizes. And speaking of consumption lounges, will 2025 be the year for liftoff in Las Vegas? After years of trying to launch a successful consumption lounge model, cannabis hospitality will finally hit its stride in 2025, predicts MJBiz Daily reporter Chris Casaccia, who covers marijuana retail and brands. He discussed several points, including the following. We're going to see some significant movement and growth in markets across the United States for consumption spaces, especially here in Vegas. There's probably at least a dozen in the pipeline here in Nevada, and lawmakers in California and Massachusetts made moves in the past year or so to create regulations that would help consumption venues succeed, although only California was successful. And it's going to provide huge allowances for consumption and micro businesses in California to sell drinks, food, wholesaling, music, and events for those in the consumption space. And obviously, New York wants to get into consumption spaces pretty quickly, he also stated. Margaret Jackson and Tess Woods contributed to this article. That's it for the Nevada highlights and Tribal Nations. I'm Tina Tasaka with 420 Technologies and Cannabis Coast to Coast News.
The medical-only market for cannabis in Florida is starting to become more of a reality now in the Sunshine State. That hope that residents would show up and vote yes on the Question 3 ballot question to legalize adult use failed to reach a 60% majority on Election Day. But that state still has more medical patients than any other state in the union. In fact, there are over 860,000 registered medical patients for cannabis use in that state, and 40,000 new patients have signed up since adult use failed to pass in November. In the meantime, that market is quickly becoming saturated with product, and prices are starting to fall while expansion continues. According to a research report released this week from Zoo Anik and Associates, prices fell 30% in the final quarter of this year. Trulieve continues to dominate that market with 35% of the statewide dispensaries. Curaleaf is second, with Cresco, Verano, and Air Wellness all behind them. But the best story might be about the privately held Jungle Boys dispensaries. They are outperforming sales by many MSOs. Privately owned Jungle Boys has 11 stores in Florida and sold 4,900 ounces of flower in the third quarter, beating MSO Monster Trulieve stores that sold 4,060. The bottom line in Florida is that despite not getting adult use passed, their medical market is vibrant and active. Next up is Virginia, where Joe Parsons has a story about a veterans advocacy group that is stepping out to help those who suffer with PTSD. Here's Joe.
I'm Joe Parsons with the Virginia Cannabis Connection, and this is the Virginia Cannabis Report on Cannabis Coast to Coast News. The veterans group that is devoted to bringing cannabis education and expanding rights to veterans has decided to change their name from the Virginia Veterans Cannabis Competition to the now Veterans Educational and Training Seminar. The focus of the group, founded by Brian Natsky, is veteran suicide and how cannabis can aid with PTSD. With cannabis in the name, it was hard to get support and reach people on social media. A lot of social media platforms will limit or just outright restrict anything that is cannabis related. His vision and his work were important enough to warrant the name change, with hopes that his organization can now reach a broader audience and have a better chance on the social media algorithms. I can personally attest to how hard it is reaching people with cannabis in your channel name. Since Virginia was the first state to legalize in the South, the demand for a legal and fair operation for adult use has caused an increase in legacy members-only events. Last week, Don Morris, founder of Higher Education, was in court for holding a cannabis legacy event in early 2023. She's been unable to speak on any media platforms about the details of her case due to her plea agreement. However, after the court, the prosecution held a press conference to report their view of the arrest and conviction. As reported by local news outlets, she's facing now up to 160 years and was found to have had over 13 pounds of cannabis and psychedelic mushrooms, with a street value of over $432,000. There was no other mention of the other vendors that were involved. However, it appears Mrs. Morris was the primary target in the investigation. Her sentencing will be on February 3rd. Afterwards, she'll then be able to finally discuss the details of her case from her perspective. She'll be giving me an exclusive interview when she's legally able to do so. So please stay tuned to Pro Cannabis Media for that interview. And lastly this week, President Biden gave 39 pardons and granted clemency to 1,500 others. That's the largest in presidential history for a single event. The best part is that a very large number of those people were incarcerated for nonviolent, cannabis-only convictions. This act was part of a promise his administration wanted to enact before he leaves office. But there needs to be uniform policy to free all the cannabis-only inmates from across the nation. Well, that's going to do it from this week. From the Virginia Cannabis Connection and reporting for Cannabis Coast to Coast News, I'm Joe Parsons. Until next time, stay lifted.
Here in Massachusetts, the Bay State passed another sales milestone this week when the total tally of sales since November 2018 reached $7 billion in sales. Well, you would think that business is booming, but with that success comes the closing of dozens of dispensaries, and more are expected to fold in the coming months. The federal government continues to delay any progress in the rescheduling initiative, with that next hearing set for the first week of the new year. And finally, tonight, the story about the pardoning President Joe Biden. With only about 40 days left in the White House, President Biden pardoned close to 1,500 low-level cannabis offenders this week. This was the largest mass pardon of past convicted cannabis criminals in one day. The Last Prisoner Project was one of a handful of advocacy groups who were pushing for the pardons, and they were able to assist on 4 of them directly. Many were between 59 and 69 years old and had already served 10 years on sentences that ran between 20 and 30 years. One was Rory Meeks, who received a 20-year sentence for a non-violent cannabis offense. After the CARES Act was passed a few years ago, Rory was transferred to home confinement, where he has been for 22 months. Now, reunited with his family in rural Iowa, he will enjoy freedom in time for the holidays coming up over the next few months. There are still thousands of nonviolent cannabis criminals behind bars, and many of these organizations, like the Last Prisoner Project, will continue to fight for their release as the fight to end cannabis prohibition continues. That'll do it for another year of cannabis news. All of us here at Cannabis Coast to Coast News want to wish all of you a happy holiday season and a new year. Our next show will be released on January 6th. Okay, Happy New Year, everyone. And remember, it's a whole new world of weed out there. Consume responsibly. We'll see you next year. Cannabis social clubs are just now starting to pop up in California, but the East Coast has been slow to figure out a model that will work for operators, regulators, and the public's consumers. As you might guess, the one city and state that has extensive experience dealing with adults at play is Las Vegas, Nevada. Now with close to 20 cannabis consumption lounges licensed and open, PCMTV founder Jimmy Young couldn't resist to check out the 24-hour, 7-day-a-week Planet 13, of course. It opened in 2021. Planet 13 is the largest cannabis dispensary in the world with 112,000 square feet of shopping space. There are dozens of windows available with bud tenders ready to help you decide which strain might fit your needs as an adult or a medical patient. And best of all, if you want to try some of the products, you might want to visit Dazed, the social consumption lounge that is attached to the store. You do have to reserve a table and step through the magic phone booth to gain access to the lounge that serves up a variety of products and strains and ways to consume them. So check out the menu of infused drinks, 1 gram pre-rolls for $25 or eighths for $60. Plus the device options for the titration or consumption of the products from a Puffco, electric, dabber, or a variety of bongs. Luckily, Jimmy had a tour guide and a tester at our table.
Hi, my name is Joe Brennan. I'm with Columbus Botanical Depot in Columbus, Ohio, cbdhemphealth.com. Today I'm going to show you guys how to run the Zenco, which is dab equipment. We're here at Planet 13 in Las Vegas, so we are in the VIP lounge where we just got served anything we asked for off this menu. Let me show you how to work this thing. We got GMO live rosin hash. We're going to put it on this little dab tool. We're going to get enough on there, and then we're going to stick it down in here. We're going to push this button so it falls right off, and then we're going to put the lid on. Then we're going to put this cup right here. We're going to hold the button. It's going to fill this cup with vapor, with cannabis vapor from concentrate. As soon as it gets enough to how much you want to consume, you go ahead and pull it off there and you inhale like this. Wow, amazing. All right, Cody, try it out. The Zenco GMO dab. Woo! How was it?
So it really looks like you drank that. But because it's vapor, so I get the drinking part because it's vapor. I'm Jimmy Young, the founder of PCMTV at MJ BizCon, and I am experiencing the first ever cannabis social lounge that I have attended in my 67 years on Earth. And here is Broderick Randall. Where's Broderick Randall from, you ask?
I am originally from Toledo, Ohio.
Buttheads!
Yay, do you know exactly? See?
Clinger, come on! This is what happens when you get old.
No, that's awesome. Salute and respect to the Mud Hens.
Right.
But also, I'm currently residing in Columbus, Ohio, where I work and do sales for Benelieves.
You know what? Benelieves.
Yeah.
I think I recognize the name. I know dispensary.
Do you? Oh, actually, we're standalone processing facility. So we sell to our dispensaries. We make products and then we sell them to dispensaries.
Oh, is there a product that I might know about a little bit?
Yeah, and it actually might be reminiscent of a four-legged animal.
Woof, woof.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, you did pretty
So he's
great.
talking about Yellow Labs, okay? And you have to understand, Ander Wensberg is a personal friend. I think I represent his company in a lot of ways. I know that, and I love his product because I was a guinea pig for it 3 years ago.
Okay,
and it was in Berkshire Roots for a year or so, and then, but more importantly, he's in 40 dispensaries in Ohio. And Broderick, are you familiar with the product?
I absolutely am. The product is very unique, discreet, and something that the cannabis and wellness industry should take a look out for and on.
So it's a measured microdose delivery system of a tincture.
Yeah, I call it a less messy tincture. That's my
a less messy tincture. I appreciate that. All right, so I'm in the middle of Las Vegas at this convention. We made all these plans. People are sitting in different places. It's kind of weird getting in, but we came in, and not only do they have weed on the menu.
Yeah, I mean they have weed, that you can consume and socially.
They sell dabs.
Oh, not just they got all different forms.
Right.
They have all different forms
It's a true tasting experience. But I think I'd like to give a shout out to Ander because I could not believe that the guys at the next table from where I'm sitting, okay, I see the Benny Leaves jacket. You want to show your jacket? Show the jacket. All right, and I'm like, wait a second.
Ohioans out there.
He says Ohio, and I'm like, do you know that Yellow Labs is in 40 dispensaries in Ohio? And of course he goes, yeah, I know the product. What are the chances of that happening?
I mean, it's only divine, I guess. It's like, that's the only thing I could think of.
He gets it. You understand, it's always about the plant.
Yes.
The plant brings people together.
Yes, community, always.
It's religion, it doesn't matter.
All walks of life.
I walk into a dispensary, and I know, first of all, everybody's half my age. It's kind of funny.
Yeah.
And I know they're not going to know who I am or what I've done in 67 years, and there's some fun stuff in there. And then I start talking about Yellow Labs, and they're like, what are you talking about? And then they say, oh, that'd be great. So you have people that come into your dispensary that don't want to smoke it, don't want to vape it. Yep. They had a bad experience with an edible.
Yep.
Hello. There's only tincture left or other milder, combinations of cannabinoids at the edible world and everything. And everybody still likes pre-rolls and flower. Am I wrong?
Yeah.
And they only buy cannabis. Everybody does.
Right.
Percentage of THC.
Yeah, a lot of people, they kind of got to get a little bit more informed and be that educated consumers so that you're able to know that, hey, it's not all about THC percentage. It's actually about, the whole, chemical makeup and what, like he said, the other cannabinoids. It's a full spectrum plant, and it has a lot of
good buzzword,
beautiful properties. So I'm pro cannabis because of cannabis has provided a much better quality of life and has changed my life. And make sure you go check out Between the Buds because we're all just buds growing and learning this plant, and all walks of life come together and like create stronger bonds and change. We could change the universe. They say one man can change the world. Maybe one plant can change the world.
It makes so much sense. I really, really expect at some point it's going to happen because there are people like you who are committed to the plant, committed to the cause, and we're all in it together. And it really does have a history of medicinal qualities. And it's really the first time we've been able to look at something that says, this is not as bad as we thought it was.
Exactly.
And all that was misinformation, and everybody knows how I feel about the plant. But anyway, I think we're going to wrap it up. I can't imagine that I'm going to have a better end to this special than we just created here.